I'm going to show you across a number of different trading tools how the footprint is effectively very superior in a number of ways relative to some of the traditional tools. When we get to units 6 to 15, we're going to start developing trade strategies. Every single practical example within the trade strategy units, we're going to be utilizing all three tools combined. The reason is very simple. The price ladder allows us to perfect execution. The market profile or candlestick allows us to develop context. And the market footprint allows us to develop confidence in our execution. Therefore, we can leverage up on our favorite trade strategies. All three of these tools together combined allow us a cross-pollination between tools so that we can make much better trading decisions. Now, when we move on to the next slides, we're really going to highlight the differences between all the different tools so that you can see how it's not a case of necessarily being good at one tool, but being very good and have an understanding of all the various tools together so that you can make powerful trading decisions. So what you have in front of you is 5 different trading tools. Now I've put them from left to right in terms of lagging information versus leading information. Now let's talk a little bit about this concept of lagging and leading information. Simply put, lagging information or tools that utilize lagging information and summarize them, effectively they're taking information that the market has already received. In other words, the information is no longer, not that it's not important, but it's no longer leading information. Now the problem with lagging information is that the market has already had time to absorb and act upon that information. So what we can see in terms of the most lagging are traditional candlesticks. Next to that, we've got the market profile. We then have the footprint chart, the price ladder, and then obviously the book map. Now from left to right, the amount of lagging versus leading information varies, and this is what we're going to discuss in the next slide. Now before we move on and talk about some of the advantages and disadvantages of each tool, I really want to highlight that it's not a case of simply one tool is better than the other. Like I said in the previous slides, it's about understanding how you can utilize each tool to extract meaningful information to make effective decisions. Now, what I want to highlight is that sometimes lagging information is important, and sometimes we can utilize lagging information. But that lagging information needs to correspond with the type of trade strategy we're trying to execute. Let me illustrate with a basic example. If we want to become very good breakout traders, then lagging information is of no use to us. Because lagging information, by the time we get that information, say via a close of a candle, or say via a moving average, or whatever it may be, by the time we get that information, the market has already utilized that information and moved accordingly. So in the example of a breakout strategy, we want to utilize leading type tools a lot more than lagging type tools. That being said, if we're looking at specific turning points in the market or key absorption points, in those instances, we don't want to use things like level 3 data from Bookmap or the price ladder, because in those instances, the information is too quick and it's too leading that it won't add value to our trade strategy. So the important thing to note is that it's about utilizing a tool, whether it's lagging or leading information, and utilizing it within the right trade strategy. And that's why, as we spoke about earlier in this unit, we highlighted the 10 different trade strategies and how we're going to effectively build those trade strategies throughout units 6 to 15. Now before I get going with these next 2 slides where we talk a little bit about the strengths and the weaknesses of each trading tool, I really want to drive home the idea that, again, it's not about one tool being superior to the other, but about having a cross-pollination between the tools and utilizing the tools within each strategy where they can be most effective. Okay, for me as a trader, I utilize predominantly the market profile for context, the price ladder for execution, and the footprint for building confidence and perfecting timing. Now, what I'm going to go through throughout this slide and the next is I'm going to start off and I just want to drill down the weaknesses of each one of the 5 trading tools we spoke about earlier, and I really want to highlight how the footprint, it's almost like the weaknesses of these tools are actually the strengths of the footprint. And through this, what you're going to see is that the weaknesses of one tool will be a strength of another tool, and vice versa. So by that definition, if you're very good at, say, the footprint and the market profile and the price ladder, you have a really all-round good you have a really good overall arsenal of trading tools. Now, the first tool I'm going to talk about is the most lagging, which is your traditional trading tools. So obviously your candlesticks with your candlestick tools like your Bollinger Bands and your moving averages, etc., etc. Now, the biggest weakness is that the information is very, very stale and it's very lagging. And most importantly, these traditional tools tend to ignore actual market flows. In other words, like I was showing you earlier in the example, when we drill down the traditional candlestick, it's simply showing you the open, the close, the high, and the low. It's not showing you any kind of flow or interaction going on between the buyers and sellers. Now, when we move on to the next tool, being the market profile, some of the weaknesses in the market profile include that it can be highly subjective. So because it's all about shape and pattern recognition, it can be quite subjective in nature. Also, it's quite a lagging informational source. In other words, as the profile is being developed, that information is obviously very lagging because we need to wait for the completion of that profile before we can start to talk about principles around shape and pattern recognition. Also, the market profile includes only price, time, and volume. It doesn't include the interaction or the order flow within each price. Now, we're going to leave the footprint out at this stage, and we're going to talk about that on the next slide. So the next sort of trading tool, which sort of almost tips the scale between lagging and leading, this is a more leading type trading tool. Its weaknesses can include that it can be particularly fast. Okay, a lot of the time with all the noise going on around the ladder, it can be way too fast to make any kind of a strong interpretation. Now, don't get me wrong, you can develop some extremely good trading strategies just utilizing the ladder, the price ladder, but again, that'll be limited to things like velocity trade strategies or very specific, unique scalping trade strategies, as opposed to making bigger decisions. Now, obviously, there is a lot of noise that comes with the price ladder and a lot of spoofing that occurs between all the computer programs. And again, the price ladder can be highly subjective in a sense where, one trader might say, oh, can you see all that buying? Where another trader says, well, yeah, that's being absorbed by sellers. So it can be a highly subjective trading tool as well. And again, obviously the price ladder, it only includes price and volume. So it doesn't include any kind of relative changes. It doesn't include any kind of snapshots or summarized version of what's effectively occurring on the price ladder. And then lastly, the most leading trading tool, which is like your level 3 data or your bookmap tool. Okay, again, these are just a significant amount of noise. You're seeing every single little contract being traded by algorithms. There's 1,001 different trade strategies going through on this trading tool. So it can be very, very noisy and nigh on impossible to make effective discretionary type trading decisions. Obviously, if you're an automated trader, then this will be a tool that you'll utilize effectively because it's the information that corresponds to the type of strategy you're adopting. And again, obviously note the type of strategies you can take on with highly leading information are very unique. Okay, so they're very much scalping type trade strategies. They're not going to include longer time frame or swing type or day type trade strategies. So those are the weaknesses that we find within both the lagging and leading tools, not including the footprint. Now we're going to move on to the footprint tool, and we're going to talk about this footprint tool now in terms of its advantages, and you'll see how those advantages effectively cover the weaknesses